So we've got a new datasheet for Abaddon the Despoiler, a new Chaos character in the Cultist Firebrand, confirmed pricing on those juicy battle forces, and a new combat patrol for Chaos Space Marines ready to go. Generally pretty good news if you're a follower of the Dark Gods this week. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos Space Marines, and as I was strongly suspecting, given that they'd taken down the previous Chaos Space Marine Combat Patrol, this week does indeed seem to be the pre-order week for the Chaos Space Marine Codex, the shiny new battle forces, and a fair bit more. It does indeed seem that the next release for Warhammer 40k is maybe a tiny bit sooner than I might have expected. It's pretty hot on the heels of Custodians, Orks, and the Balance update. Another major faction gets their codex for the game. This one will be going up for pre-order on Saturday the 11th of May, and then full sale in stores around the world on Saturday the 25th of May. Seems that we're getting basically everything we were expecting for the Chaos Space Marines this week. The Codex Edition and the Limited Edition one, the standard dice and the datasheet cards that accompany each codex, both battle forces, the Dread Talons and the Veterans of the Long War, the new and updated Combat Patrol going live on the same day it would seem, with the Possessed and the Legionaries and the Cultists, and perhaps the biggest small surprise is a new Cultist Firebrand, a model from Blackstone Fortress that sounds like he's going to be a new datasheet for the Codex, wandering around with his fairly potent flamer. Alongside all of this, we've got a few rules teasers, unfortunately no confirmed detachment list or unit list this time round sadly, though we do have Abaddon's datasheet, the number of datasheets present in the codex, plus a few teasers of Firebrand rules as well, so at least a few hints. There's also a made-to-order release range for Tau and Orks. While we're talking battle forces, it's probably worth mentioning that Games Workshop usually don't have a particularly good release record with these. At least a fair number of their Battleforce launch boxes tend to go out of stock really quite quickly, sometimes in minutes or hours on day of launch, though depending on how popular the sets are and how many they've chosen to produce, sometimes they do persist for a bit longer or occasionally come back into stock later. For my affiliate discount retailers, links down in the video description, these are the times that they usually put their stock up for sale. Wargame Portal in the USA is midnight Central Time, Element Games in the UK is 10 AM UK time, Gap Games in Australia tends to be midday Australian Eastern Standard Time, and Fenris Workshop in Canada tends to be midnight Eastern Time. If you do want to pick up one of these boxes, my usual plan will be to decide ahead of time, so you're not umming and ahhing or buying out of FOMO on the day. See if the discount retailers have any going at all, and there are plenty of others scattered around the world in your own locations, and then fall back to the Games Workshop web store, which tends to have more stock if Games Workshop have indeed underproduced, as they often do. If any of you do choose to use those links in the video description, it does help support Auspex Tactics a little bit, plus saves you some money versus the Games Workshop web store, and a big thank you who do choose to use those ones if you were picking up some Warhammer anyway. Let's get into releases and prices though, and we'll start out with the Battleforce box sets. It seems that the Dread Talons and the Veterans of the Long War are both £140, $230 or 180 euros. That is a bit higher than certain recent battle forces like the Orc Stomper Boys and the Custodians Auric Champions. They've basically gone for the Christmas battle force sort of pricing point for these things, as opposed to the cheaper Custodians and Orc ones. For the Dread Talons, you get the Jump Pack Lord, that's the new sculpt for the box set, 10 Raptors that can be built as Warp Talons, the Heretic Astartes Demon Prince, and one set each of Accursed Cultists, Dark Commune, and Chaos Cultists. This one's basically the Winged Things plus Cultist box set pretty much, and I've heard people saying that this one is maybe the one that might be a bit more aimed at current Chaos Space Marine collectors, feeling a bit more of an add-on type box set as opposed to the more core offering that the Veterans box has. Discount wise, it looks like it's £85 off the total pricing, or around about $140. That's equates for a discount rate of around about 38% in theory land if you wanted all the kits separately. Generally considered to be on the upper end for Games Workshop, their combat patrols these days tend to be more in the sort of 20 to 30 sort of bracket, or at least for all the ones that they've been coming out with in 10th edition. Otherwise, for points in the box set, it looks like you get around about 670 points at current point values. Does depend a bit on a few things like how you equip the Demon Prince or the Raptors versus the Warp Talons. It equates to around about 2.9 points per dollar, which I think is okay for Warhammer 40k in general, but not exactly stand out for a discount box set. That one has been brought down very slightly by the more recent Chaos points adjustments. Overall, if you did want these sculpts at some points for Chaos Space Marines, this one is a discount on those, and particularly good if you can get it from a third-party retailer offering further discount on that. As ever, still really quite an expensive box set though that does seem to be par for the course for Games Workshop boxes. Otherwise, we've got the Veterans of the Long War. This one's £140, $230 or 180 euros. This one's the one that's maybe aimed at the more core of the Chaos Space Marine range, and certainly feels like the box set that you'd go for first if you were trying to build up the heart of a collection. This one gets you the new Chaos Lord on foot, 10 Legionaries, 2 sets of 5 Terminators, 5 Chosen and 5 Possessed. Really quite a lot of scary, dangerous Space Marines there. A fairly elite set of Chaos Marines as they go. At that price it roughly equates to a 34% discount, so I guess a tiny bit less so than the Veterans of the Long War, but honestly that small amount of difference between those I think isn't really worth considering how much it is. I think for most people it's just going to come down to which of the models you'd like out of this one or the other one, if indeed you're interested in any of course. I feel like this would be the one to go for if you were starting Chaos Space Marines, and Games Workshop did state that they'd try to design it so that you could pick up the one and the other, and there wouldn't be any overlap units if you did want to get one big Chaos army all in one go, and have like 1500 points on the table straight away. For points on the table, it does get you significantly more than the Cultist and Raptors one, at around about 890 points or so, about 3.8 points per dollar, which I think is a bit more like it. For both the army sets, I feel like the kits are generally quite good. They all hail from the more recent age of Chaos Space Marines. I suppose the Raptors are some of the oldest ones out of the Dread Talons box set. In general, I feel like these boxes were fairly well received. I'll be interested to hear what your takes are on them though. If you did have your eye on them in any way, is the price point good enough to be worth it or not? Moving on though, for quite a lot of existing Chaos collectors, one of the most interesting things is going to be the new Chaos Codex, £35, €45 or $60. This one's going to be the one that adds the new detachments for Chaos Space Marines, and maybe being quite a nice one as it might give you different ways to field. This are a little bit more flavoured around the individual legions. In their preview article, Games Workshop confirmed that there's 48 datasheets. Previously, I believe there were 49 in the Chaos Index, so we are losing one there. And in reality that means that we're losing 3, given that we've gained the Jump Pack Lord and the Cultist Firebrand, which means 3 datasheets are going away. 2 of those are generally expected to be Lucius the Eternal and Noise Marines. They're the ones that are going to the Emperor's Children book, so they'll be moved to their digital index, and then later in 10th edition, most likely when the Emperor's Children Codex comes out, they'll find a home there. Otherwise, my guess for the last one that will be removed would be Huron Blackheart, unfortunately. I believe that would leave him as the last Finecast style model for Codex Chaos, and over the last few book releases a lot of Finecast things have disappeared, particularly named characters. That's not for definite on him though, it could be the Exalted Champion. I guess we might know if Games Workshop shows off the contents page at some point. I believe at the moment both the Exalted Champion and Huron are out of print. Otherwise, for detachments, we still only have teasers and not firm names. Previously in their reveal show, they talked about Sneaky Alpha Legion, Followers of Vashtor, Renegades and Pirates, and Demon Engines and Tanks, and in the preview article today they talked about Heretic Astartes Elites, maybe some sort of Veterans of the Long War type thing there, one for Cultist Hordes, and one for Demon-touched monsters, so perhaps a Demonkin detachment on that one. Between those, I feel like you'd have got to at least some sort of good representation for most of the Chaos Legions. I think it might just be Night Lords that we're missing from the more Legion sort of archetypes out of that list. If so, I wouldn't be too surprised if we get a detachment literally called Dread Talons. Hopefully the Twisted Sons of Curse get their own rules. In any case, I'm sure we'll have plenty of rules shown off over the week for the Chaos Marines. Will be interesting to dig into a few rules from their preview articles. Just one thing to note while we're talking about the Codex is that they did have a video showing off what's supposed to be the full contents page for the book, but unfortunately they did show off the 9th edition book rather than the 10th edition one here. You can tell by the contents and the way that it's not organised with detachments or anything like that, just listing the legions, plus say no datasheet for the new Jump Pack Lord or anything like that. I thought that was just worth a quick mention, as I had already seen it confusing a few people online. Just don't pay attention to this one as a teaser. And I must admit it's not the greatest look in the world if you're trying to show off one of your exciting new books that you want people to buy. We did get one major rules confirmation though, which are the new rules for Abaddon the Despoiler. This one comes from the datasheet cards preview, where they often seem to have the faction leader on the first page of these, so we get a quick look at the current War Master. Broadly though, for Despoiler fans it's not really the best news out there. It's essentially 3 small nerfs. The last one might be considered a big nerf unless he does drop in points, though it's likely far less of a big deal if you're not using him in the Slaves to Darkness type detachment if it still exists. In any case, the first nerf is that the auras now exclude damned units, so its auras affect everything else that's a Heretic Astartes keyword thing, just not if it's got the damned keyword, and at the moment we don't know 100% what that is. but my instinct is that it's probably going to be the more cultist and other mortal chaos followers, perhaps being a shortening for the lost and the damned. I'm not 100% sure on that one at this point though. It could be a keyword for Demon King in its own weird way, though the cultist thing would be my first guess. Otherwise, his Dark Pact's command point farming ability has taken a nerf. Previously, it was a 2+ chance to farm a command point if you did a Dark Pact and you passed the leadership test. Now, unfortunately, you only get the command point if you scored a 7 or more on that leadership test, but there's no need to roll the 2+. The maths on that isn't the most obvious in the world, but it's not the biggest jump in the world. Previously, you'd have around about a 70% chance to farm that command point if you did a Dark Pact. Now that drops down to a 58% chance to farm that command point while doing one, so it's going to be just a little bit less reliable on the whole CP front. Finally, the one that might annoy people a bit is that he's lost the deity-specific keywords. He only has Undivided now. Previously, he used to have the Nurgle, Slanesh, Khorne and Tzeentch keywords, which meant that say if you had him and a big unit of Terminators, you could use any of the Dark Pacts with their boost effect, so get some pretty savage shooting and melee off in the exact best way to do so. You still get the boosted version for Undivided, though maybe has a bit of overlap with his own rerolls. I think personally I wouldn't try and stress about this too much at this point really, there's just too many unknowns for the Chaos Codex. My guess is that those deity-specific keywords will only apply to that one detachment, so if you're choosing any of the other 7 detachments in Codex Chaos Space Marines, it's unlikely to be relevant. And even then, at this point, we don't know whether Slaves to Darkness has been rewritten in some major way. And we don't know if Abaddon's points might have dropped to compensate for this, which wouldn't be the worst thing while he's up at 310 points right now. Overall, it is a trio of small nerfs, too early to say whether it's really a significant power cut for him or not though. Next up, just in case 2 big Battleforce box sets weren't enough, we've also got the new Combat Patrol set as well. This one's £95, €125 or $160, and this one gets you a Master of Possession, 5 Possessed, 10 Legionaries and 10 Cultists. At least from the artwork here, it doesn't look like there's any Legionary kill team frame included in that, though they did surprise us with the Tau Pathfinder one recently. I guess we'll have to wait and see for more sprue pictures and things as to whether or not it's included. 4 points in the box, there's 420, which is a bit less than the previous, partly due to having the cultists in there, I think. Though in their preview article, Games Workshop themselves said it was around about 460 points in game, so I'm not sure if that's going by older points costs, or whether their Warhammer community team already knows the points costs that come out that will drop alongside the Codex. In any case, the discount on this one is a little bit less than the Battleforce's, around about 27% off. I'd argue that the miniatures contained within are nice enough, fairly central units to the army. Maybe depends most on whether or not you've got enough or too many legionaries and cultists. The possessed, I think, are generally quite nice and threatening and quite fun models. I guess the advantage of this one is that you'd be able to get your hands on it a lot more easily at a discount versus all of the Battleforce box sets. If the difference is between buying this one at one of the discount retailers versus buying the Battleforce's full price from Games Workshop themselves, then in general this one would be the better deal versus the GW web store overall big Battleforces. In any case, I'd be interested to hear whether or not you think that this one beats the old Chaos Combat Patrol. I might do a few channel polls this week as well to ask about the Chaos release and ask what you think about this one versus the last. Finally, for the Chaos Space Marine releases, we've got the Cultist Firebrand. No prices on this guy yet, which I'm guessing means that he's going to be a web store only miniature, so not distributed to most discount retailers, bar a few that order them in, such as Wargame Portal in the USA. As he goes, he is really quite a fun Blackstone Fortress miniature, a great big Chaos Cultist with a massive flamethrower. It was interesting that we saw some draft rules on a datasheet for him back in 9th edition, but he never wound up being his own unit. Now it seems they've decided to pull the trigger on that. They gave us a couple of teasers as to his rules. Apparently he's going to be attacking with a Balefire Pike, so d6 plus 3 attacks there at strength 5, meaning the average like 6 or 7 overall. Not sure if there's going to be any AP on that. And otherwise the special rule is to allow your cultist to reroll leadership test. I guess that could be handy enough for Dark Pacts, I suppose. My guess is that he'll probably be the same price as the sort of cheaper support character offerings from Games Workshop, so £22, $35 or €30 most likely. Finally, for the release, we've got the standard issue dice and datasheet cards. The 16 faction dice should usually be £18, €23 or $32. They have the 8-pointed star on the place where the 6 should be. And then the datasheet cards will be £20, €27 or $35. They've got the 48 ones for standard codex units, plus the 4 for the units in the combat patrol, and 1 for the army rule apparently. Can be handy enough flashcards for certain units in game. I guess that means for the Chaos Space Marines, the only things that we'll be waiting on are the two Chaos Lords, which will release separately at a later date. Both of them I think are nice enough miniatures. The jump pack one on the left is nice to have as a generic character to run with Raptors, which will make their datasheet maybe a little bit more interesting, and the one on the right with the Foot Lord type thing, I think he's pretty fun and well done, harking back to the old school Chaos Lord. Finally, for the news and reveals and things, it looks like we've got made-to-order releases for Tau and Orks as well. These ones will be from Games Workshop's web store, and they'll be the usual case of order the miniature, and then they make it, and then it turns up within 180 days, though often kind of sooner. This one broadly seems to be a run of units that they sent to Legends in the Tau and Ork codexes. There's Boss Zagstrug and Captain Badrug for the Orks, both sadly went to Legends on their datasheets. Ornvar and Ornshi, the named ethereals for the Tau, Ornshi in metal, Commander Longstrike for the sort of resin hammerhead insert, some Farsight Enclave shoulder pads, and the Tidal gun rig, the plastic kit that still has current rules for the Tau Empire to go alongside your shield line and things. Obviously, it's kind of a shame that they didn't get either updated plastic miniatures or at least keep their in-game rules. Most of these went to Warhammer Legends. Price on these can be a bit variable from the web store. The resin ones generally don't tend to be too bad value versus Games Workshop's own more current plastic sculpts. The metal ones tend to be very expensive for what they are. In any case, let me know what you make of the Chaos releases. Would you be interested in either one of those battle forces at that price? What do you make of the new rules teasers and combat patrols, or that Cultist Firebrand? Look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you were picking these up later in the week, buying anything through the links in the video description, it does go to help support the channel and keep the content coming. They all save you money versus the Games Workshop web store. In any case, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, and I'll certainly cover any Chaos news that we get this week, and do a full review of the book once we get it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what all these detachments do. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description down below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.